YouTube, there is no firearms in this video.
Welcome back to the Airgunner YouTube channel. In this episode, I will try to fix my Beeman P17 that I got from Airgun source a few years ago. In the last few videos with this pistol, I've tried lubing it, hoping that this will fix my issue. I've tried changing the piston seal because that's pretty easy. It did not change much. Then I tried changing the breech seal, which did affect the velocity a little bit. I gained like 20 FPS. Today we are going to try to change the valve seals, which mean a full disassembly. To do so, you will need a 13mm wrench or an adjustable wrench, a few Allen keys, and a set of punch is also a good thing to have. You will also need O-rings and picks. If things does not go according to plan, we will use Teflon tape, and to put it back together, I will use some silicone oil and some silicone grease. Enough rambling, let's get a baseline under the chronograph with Crossman pointed 7.4 grains.
378.8, 370.5, it was a bit low, 373.1, 378.8, 376.5. Those are not the most consistent pellets, but this will do as a baseline.
Let's get right into it. The first step will be to pop it open. Then you will need a 2mm Allen key and a 3/16 punch after that to punch the pin out to remove the piston. We already did that in one of my previous videos. If you want to see that, I did change the piston seal and also talked about the breech hole that might be a problem sometimes. So once you did loosen the set screw and push the pin out, you can pull the piston out. I will not really talk about that much, but as I said, I already made a video about that. Then you will need a 2.5mm Allen key to remove the right side grip. It is a bit hard to pop off. You might need to pry it off, but do that slowly. Be careful. Try to lift all of the corners at the same time and not to pry stuff too much and break your frame possibly. So yeah, take your time and go slow. Use your nails if you have some. Use a screwdriver if you don't, because I don't. Now that this is done, you can undo the big torsion spring. Basically, it is resting on one side of the grip. You want to make it pop out of there. Try to remember how to put it back in. If you don't, I'm here for it. Okay, I'm a bit shaky, but it is pretty easy to put back in if you are not that shaky. So this is how it goes. Next, you can remove the trigger spring. This is a little spring that you can slide up to go over the bar so it will let go. Basically, it is pretty easy to remove, but just try to not lose it. It is resting inside of there, so it should not really fly away, but make sure not to break or lose it because that will affect your trigger. Also, those weird springs can be a bit hard to find, so put it somewhere safe where you will not lose it. Next, we will remove the pin for the drops here, I believe they call that. I don't really care about the name, I just want to get it out of there. This part can be a bit fiddly to remove and put back in, especially if you did not notice how it was. It kind of hooks into the other part and does not have much space to come in and out, but this is fairly easy work overall. I believe that most people can work on a P17, so don't get scared about springs and stuff, just do it. So we got one more thing done. Now you can remove the other pin that will remove the rest of the trigger linkage thingy stuff. Yeah, By the way, the linkage pin is longer than the drop sear pin, so make sure not to mix those. Also, you want to be careful while you remove this part because it is in fact 2 or 3 parts, I believe. So if you keep them together, it will be easier to put back together. After that, if it did not fall by itself already, you can remove the pin that holds the trigger in. This one is the smallest that we removed yet, so we cannot really mix them up unless we forget. Now we can take a 2mm Allen key to loosen the set screw on top of the compression chamber. Don't forget this step before trying to remove the pin on the side. Mine seems seemed to be bigger on this side, so I decided to punch it out this way. So maybe this matters, maybe not. Then you can pull the whole compression chamber out. You will be left with some trigger parts. I believe that you can remove something in there with the spring to delete the auto safety, but we will not talk about that. I'm not sure if this pin is similar to the first one that we took out that I don't have on the table, but it is bigger than the last few. So if you do have a bad breathe hole, this will be about the best moment to polish it. We still need to take out those fins before being able to unscrew the valve out. I used a 1/16 punch. It seems to work pretty good, both to remove it and line it up afterwards while reassembling it. This pin is quite a bit smaller, so you will not mix it up. To remove the fins, you simply want to kind of lift them and pull, but this one was kind of stuck, this one was kind of not. Make sure that you put the different one in the middle when you reassemble it, because there is something to catch on the trigger or something. I'm not quite sure of how this works, but it works. Okay, now to unscrew the valve, you will need a 13mm wrench. I was a bit lazy and did not feel like getting one from the garage because it's freaking cold outside, so I used an adjustable wrench. Works just fine. You might need to pull on it a little bit to pop it out. This is a bit weird, but it seems to do the same thing in other videos. So now you can inspect the O-rings and inside of the valve area to see if there is dirt and if your O-rings are looking bad, which could cause it to have lower velocity. Apparently, if you remove the screw on the back, you might want to use Loctite because it is tapered or something and it will never work the same again.
It is pretty hard to focus on that, but this one does not look brand new, but does not look horrible either. This one does look kind of bad. I think it is missing a part of it, so I'm not sure if I will only change this one right now. Thinking about it, trying to get a focus, and I'm quitting.
Alright, so on the internet, they recommend using a 006 SAE O-ring for the tip and a 008 O-ring for the other one. This is 006. This is 008.
People on the internet recommend those 008 O-rings, but I believe they are a bit less thick than the original ones. So I might not change this one right now. This one does look pretty bad though, so I will change it. I'm getting like 8.25mm for the worn O-ring on this side, and barely more than 7.8mm for the 008 replacement. So I'm not doing that. Let's see if there will be another option. So this is the 008 O-ring. This is an R02 O-ring from the other kit. It does look a bit bigger, so this looks like it might be way closer to that. The R02 O-ring does seem a tiny bit bigger than the one I got on there currently, so this will be a better replacement. I believe it is thicker too. Let's look at the metal together. This should not affect much, and it is thicker and bigger, and I believe that will be a better replacement than the 008 O-ring. This one is a bit harder to measure, but it seems to be like 6.5mm. Let's see what the replacement is. Seems to be around the same size, but it is not chewed up, so that's a good thing. Let's see if there will be another option in the metric kit. Judging by the sizes on there, I would waste my time. It is either smaller or bigger, so nah. So what we got here is a 006 SAE O-ring, and this is the R02 from this Keezy kit. They say that it is 4.4 by 8.4 by 2. This is ID, OD, and cross section. So yeah, I believe we are going to use that, but that's enough talking because that's a voiceover. Let's start by removing the O-ring on the tip of the valve. By the way, having good picks will make this a lot easier. So this is the original seal. It does not look too bad, but it does not look too great. It looks a bit squished on one side. This one has a smaller middle. This one has a bigger middle. This is the original. Hopefully that does not affect things too much. Let's see. I might just change both at this point and yep.
Make sure to clean up the surfaces before installing new O-rings.
Alright, so it is a bit of a loose fit sideways like that since the middle is bigger and this one seems to be larger. So yeah, I don't know how that will work out, but
now to remove the second O-ring, which is in the middle, you could remove the bolt on the bottom, but that's really not recommended. As I said, it is tapered and stuff, and you will need to use Loctite to keep it on there later. So you might not want to risk that. I preferred sliding the O-ring over the spring and stuff. I did need some pretty good picks and a bit of patience, but I believe that's a better way to do it. Those harder O-rings are a bit harder to slide over the spring, but with the replacement softer ones, cheaper ones, it is very easy and should not be a huge problem. So this is how I did it.
Alright, so this is the original seal. This is what I'm replacing it with. This is an R02. And it does look a bit bigger, so I like that.
As I said, the original seal were harder / add a higher durometer value. I guess this is how it works. I'm not really a professional. Harder seals does tend to last longer and stuff, but those are way cheaper. If I knew the exact size and could find the exact ones I needed, maybe I will do that, but this is really cheap and easy. Stay tuned to see if I'm wasting my time or if that will work and help you fix yours.
Got it. From what I understand, when you cock it, it goes something like that. So I kind of don't like that, so I might try to put some Teflon tape to space it out a bit. Probably only need a tiny bit. I hate this stuff. It is impossible to play with, but let's try to put the O-ring over it.
It took a bit of fiddling to get the Teflon tape to stay and look about straight on there, but I believe that it is a good idea. I'm not sure if the loose fit was dramatic, but I don't like it.
Alright, so I got it to sit a bit higher and not be as loose like that, so I kind of like it. This one does look about the right size, so let's see what that will do for us.
At this point, I was wondering if I wanted to use some super lube O-ring, which is thicker silicone oil, or regular chamber oil style / very thin silicone oil. I decided to go with thicker silicone oil for the valve because those will not see lube very often. This one is thicker, might stay longer, but might be a bit less slippery, might cause a longer break-in. I don't really know. Tell me what you guys will use personally. You don't want to put too much lube in there, but make sure that everything is sliding nicely, has a nice little coat of it on there, and will be slippery basically. So that's about the point of silicone oil. Not having a lot but still being slippery. It is not very good on metal, but it is very good for seals and stuff like that. So try not to soak up the threads with it, and if you do, try to wipe it down. I was wondering if some Teflon tape on those threads could help, but I did not use that. Then I've tried blowing into the valve hole to see if junk will come out either from the transfer port or the compression chamber, but not much. I still gave it a good cleaning into the valve hole with a Q-tip and with a bigger Q-tip into the compression chamber to make sure that it is starting fresh. After that, I had to apply some new lube in there. I decided to use my thick silicone oil, which I will not do again, I believe. I don't know if this is causing it, but it seemed to be working better the last time, so I will use either silicone grease or the recommended white lithium grease for the piston. The annoying part about white lithium grease is that you need to put a very thin coat and it will cause a lot of junk inside of your gun. Enough rambling, let's start putting it back together. You will screw the valve back in. It is spring loaded, so you might have a bit of a trouble to get it started, but it is pretty easy to screw in by hand. You will only need the wrench for the last little bit. Don't over tighten it, do only a little bit with the wrench. It seems to line up pretty good with the casing and stuff, so once it seems to line up, just stop, I guess. It seemed to be about right for me, at least. Now you want to put the fins back in. You simply slide them in and try to line them up with the pinhole. I decided to align them one by one with the punch just to make sure that it is not a pain afterwards, and it did work out pretty well, so I suggest that you do that. Make sure that you put the different one in the middle or it will cause issues. I assume that this has a purpose or they will not have done that. So yeah, this is the part that rotates into the frame. I'm not sure exactly of how everything works. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a repairman either. I'm a YouTuber and I'm doing that to help you guys. So yeah, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want more of those, because that's a lot of work. So once you got the fins lined up, you can put the pin back in. You should not need a lot of force. If you do, it's because it is not lining up and you don't want to hit on your fins. You might break something. So this was enough of force for me.
By the way, I kept all of my original seals to make sure that if it doesn't work or if I want the actual O-rings later, I can measure that and see. Now, if I remember right, I can put that back in there. My pins seem to have a bigger side than the other, but not really by the look of it. So I don't think there is a side.
You should never really need a lot of force to put a pin back in or to push a pin out. If you do, there is most likely another issue or your pin is just bad.
If there is resistance, something is not straight, so make sure not to smack too hard.
Having a good set of punches with one the closest to your pin is always very practical to center them.
The f was that? Hopefully this pin is the only thing that disappeared from the table.
Alright, once you got your compression chamber pin back into there and it is flush on both sides, you can tighten the set screw. Don't put it too tight, but you also don't want that to get loose or it could cause issues later. Before putting the piston back in, you might want to grease it with silicone grease, maybe white lithium grease, maybe PTFE grease, something not petroleum, that's for sure. Something that will not destroy your seals and combust is important. But I don't know if silicone grease is exactly what you want to use. I had a little bit of binding, I believe. I don't know if that was from the oil that I got into the tube, or it seemed to work pretty good with silicone grease last time when I did change the piston seals. So I will not blame the grease, maybe more the oil right now. But yeah, you use whatever you want. I'm just here to tell you my experience and not to use something dangerous that will cause combustion and burn your seals and you know, stuff like that. Once this is done and that you did check that you don't have a breathe hole burr that will rip off your new O-ring, you can slide the piston back in. Try to do that as straight as possible, slowly, maybe jiggle a bit, spin a bit until it does go in there. I don't remember if it did that last time, but I seem to be getting pretty decent compression. Once you got the piston to line up with the hole on the frame, you can put the pin back in. Also, don't forget to tighten the set screw on top of it to make sure not to have issues later.
I believe that the longest was this one. The second was this one. And the shortest was this one for the trigger, if I remember right. By the way, this trigger is adjustable and you can see the screw in there. And this is the tip of it. It is rounded and stuff. Pretty nice.
By the way, you don't want to put the pins before you put the stuff back in because it will only cause you issues. I did that and I had to remove all of them to put the stuff back in basically, so don't do that.
So this is back in there. This is kind of interesting. The piston does swivel in there and stuff with the trigger, so interesting. I need to stop talking, that's a voiceover.
After reinstalling the trigger, you can reinstall the trigger linkage. Basically, it has 2 or 3 pieces. You want to make sure that they line up together. You also do want to remove the pin if you did that. You will need to put it in a bit sideways to line up on the bolt that was on the bottom of the compression chamber. Once you did that and it lines up right, you can simply put the pin back in.
The spring was catching somewhere around here.
Next will be the drop sear thingy with the little spring. The spring position is pretty easy to get, but getting this one in there can be a bit finicky. You need to slide it under / inside of the other part to catch on the top around there. So yeah, that can be a bit finicky, but it is not that bad either. I've seen way worse triggers than that. While you are at it, you might want to use some lube onto the moving and rubbing parts. That can always help for longevity or just for a better feel. I am using silicone oil because I'm lazy and it is better than nothing, but you might want to use some kind of grease or moly or whatever. Quick note, don't forget to put the spring back in before the pin or it will not be able to slide in. You need to put both parts as an assembly. The next spring will be the trigger spring. This one is pretty easy to put back in. Simply put it back in the notch, holding it, and try to stretch it as straight as possible to put it back over the post. Do that gently. You don't want to deform the spring or that might affect your trigger pull. You also don't want to break it or that might be a bit hard to find a new one, so be careful with those springs. The last spring will be the tension spring. This one is a bit weird to put back in. If you don't remember how you got it out, you need to slide it in there to grab onto this part, and I'm not going to lie, I had to check a video to remember that. Once you did manage to get it back in there, you simply need to pre-tension it and make it settle into the grip frame. I suggest that you do use pliers to help yourself because it is a bit hard to do with fingers only, but you might be a tough guy and you will not need that. Next will be the spring that did pop out by itself. Some people seem to put it back into the grip frame while they try to screw it back in, but I decided to try to make it stay right there and it seemed to work, so that seems a lot easier. Then you want to put your grip back onto the pins and make sure that it does go straight on there before trying to put the screw back in. This might sound like the easiest step of all of them, but my screw did not seem to want to go back in there without trying to cross thread, so make sure that you don't strip your frame. That might be annoying if you do so. Remember that this is a metal screw into plastic and that if things are not straight, you can easily break something, and that does not sound fun at all. But yeah, basically we are pretty much done and ready to test it out under the chronograph and compare it with the baseline that we got at the beginning of the video.
$359 and it did pop open. 359.9, 363, 368, 376.2, 377.2, 377.6. So very consistent. At least it is getting very consistent, but still not pushing the 400 FPS that I was getting at the beginning when it was brand new. $383.4, 385.7, 389.2, 383.5, 389.2, and I still did not close it right. 386.7, 386.9, 383.8. Seems to be about what we will get with Crossman pointed 7.4 grains for now. This is not quite the 400 FPS that I was getting, but it is not that far either. I want to try like 5 RWS 7 grain pellets to see. It was very close to 410 FPS with those. So RWS Hobby 7 grain, 397, so really not too bad. 393.1, 395.2, 397.5, and 397.9. So our last two shots are 397.9 and 397.5. Pretty consistent with the RWS, really not too bad with the Crossman pellets. So I can say that that was worth it. Alright, so let's make a quick recap. I did change both seals into the valve and we did gain a little bit of velocity. For the valve tip, we did use the 006 O-ring from the SAE kit. It did fit pretty good in there, but I did have to space it a tiny bit with Teflon tape to get a better fit. This one is 1/8 ID by 1/4 OD by 1/16 cross center, basically thickness. For the bigger O-ring in the middle of the valve, I did not use a 008 O-ring. It seemed to be a bit small. Instead, I used an R02 O-ring from the metric kit. This one is 4.4 millimeter inside diameter by 8.4 outside by 2 millimeter thickness cross section. So this seemed to work pretty decent. It used to shoot a little bit faster when it was brand new. I think I will be satisfied with that if it keeps being consistent and still shooting only 10 or 15 FPS under what it used to do with more expensive / harder seals. Also, those are not the exact size. If you guys know the exact size before getting worn, I've worn ones, but that's kind of bad to measure. That's not really precise. So if someone has better info on actual seals, leave that in the comments. It might break in and get a little bit faster. I doubt that, but yet I'm pretty satisfied with what we got. I don't know if you guys are. If you learned something, leave a thumbs up. Anyways, that will be about it for today. If you want to see the breech seal or the piston O-ring swap video, make sure to check out the Beeman P17 playlist. Again, thanks to you for watching until the end. Thanks to Airgun Source for supporting the channel, and I will see y'all in the next one, okay?